Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Tailgating with Lot C. I'm Joe, and I'm joined with Mark today.
How's it going, everyone?
And today we're serving up some food for thought on the new BNR announcement that just came to us on Monday, which is the day that we are recording this podcast. I guess let's start off. What are your just general thoughts on the BNR?
In a word, underwhelmed.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie, it's quite disappointing. The two formats I care about the most in the announcements are Modern and Pioneer, and both were disappointing to see. I'm assuming all the Pauper fans out there probably a little bit happy. The cards they were wanting to go was Missy Sanctuary and Expedition Man makes sense going. I think it's
Right.
a Tron
With the power of Tron and Pauper, I guess I get that one.
and
Slow it
historic.
down a little bit.
Yeah, it was fair enough. And then historic. I know you play more than I do. I think that all the cards that were banned or suspended were fair.
Yeah, my Gruul Goblins deck just got better now that I don't have to run into Nexus Fate, although Burning Tree Emissary going is a bit of a blow. However, Gruul definitely did deserve a nerf for as far as historic goes, that's for sure. So
Right.
yeah, well, underwhelming. Yeah, I agree. We got like a few things, like obviously historic got like 5 cards, like four banned, 1 suspended.
Yeah.
Beyond that, like Pauper got 2 of the big cards banned, which,
fair enough. Yeah.
fair enough for that. But then you look at Modern, you look at Pioneer, and it kind of loses momentum,
Absolutely.
So you see, so what should we start with? What format should we start with here?
I think we'll start the way it goes down the list here, and we should probably just start with Pioneer and get what I believe is going to be our negativity out of the way at the beginning here a little bit.
Yeah, I got some negative things to say about this this announcement for Pioneer. That's for sure.
True.
So Oath of Nissa was unbanned.
There has not been a banning in Pioneer, just an unbanning.
Yeah,
for a format that's been out for less than a year.
When you go through and you look at what's wrong with Pioneer, you look at the combo decks and you see Inverter of Truth, you see the Lotus Breach. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
that they didn't ban even a piece from one of those decks.
No, it's completely ridiculous. And one of the issues is not only is this hurting the format in the general, like we've discussed already, combo decks making the format completely boring to play against. They're dominating the format no matter what WotC's statistics say. I believe they're a bit inaccurate. But also, it's like the point is also one of the reasons Dimir Inverter performs so well is because they have these broken cantrips in them. The Dig Through Times and the Treasure Cruises make them incredibly hard to compete against because they don't need to worry about putting all these pieces out, or they have a 2-card combo they need to make, so they just put some pieces around there like the huge cantrips or the Jaces and everything and make it a lot easier to play. So it's like we don't know how long these other cantrips could even stay in the format until the other cards are banned, in my opinion, because Sultide Delirium's a deck that runs around, with Burns Prodigy and what else, or whatever. So now we're not going to know for a further amount of time, well, how long should Dig Through Time and Treasure Cruise even stay in the format, along with all the big issues that these decks pose already.
Well, right, because you look at those cantrips and they're broken when used that way.
Yeah, and they're banned in Modern, so obviously it's ridiculous.
But are they necessarily bannable in Pioneer?
I don't know
without those combo pieces, because we can't judge those cards right now because it looks like, oh, they're in the decks that are winning. Well, they're in the decks that are winning because they're
2-card combos.
They're exactly.
Anytime you make a 2-card combo in a format, especially with a 2-drop and a 4-drop in a format like Pioneer, it's going to be incredibly easy. I wouldn't say that Devoted Druid in Modern is bannable because it's a 2-part card combo. It's a 2-drop and a 3-drop but because there's ways to answer it.
Right.
But it's like you can't tell now. That's what the issue is with these combo decks.
Yeah.
So, getting a accurate evaluation on the other cards already makes it so difficult. And it's just like as you said, I believe you know more about it than I do, like WotC didn't justify banning either of the cards because their statistics as far as win rate weren't as accurate as what we thought.
Yeah, they had mentioned that the data doesn't support the combo decks to be banned. I guess through win rate in various tournaments or just MTGO statistics overall, which is to me kind of a cop out considering how few people are playing the format right now because of those formats anyways. So even though their data might show that they're not winning as many games as people think they are, it's still making the format boring. It's still driving players away from the format into other formats like Historic, especially now that Historic's looking better. Uh, I don't know. Pioneer definitely needed probably a few bans, and they didn't receive any, which is everyone I think was looking forward to Pioneer receiving one or two of these bans.
Yeah, to just try it out again.
Right. And yeah, they just didn't deliver, and I don't know whether or not their data, is totally accurate or not. I think it's still a bit of a slap in the face.
Yeah, no, I think that their department really dropped the ball on this one. I think that, statistics, depending on how you evaluate them, can be, pushed for certain, plans, no matter way you look at it. And it's like, well, if I'm somebody who's looking the outside in, I realize that, maybe the statistics say, well, they're maybe not performing as well. Maybe that is accurate. But if you play the game and you know what's happening, you look at beforehand when people are playing paper and all these other formats or these other, events and whatnot. Demir Inverter and Lotus Field Breach dominated the meta. It's a fact. They still are. It's like, well, maybe it's because the statistics don't reflect that currently because no one's playing the game and no one wants to go on MTGO and play Pioneer.
Right.
And when they play Pioneer, they maybe don't want to play the Demir Inverter deck because it's boring.
Right,
so
exactly.
If they're going to play Pioneer, maybe they'll play like me. If I were to go on MTGO, I'd probably play my Rakdos deck, and maybe that's what I would do. It's like their statistics lie because no one wants to play it.
Right.
And it's like that should be reason enough because at the end of the day, Magic is a game, and no one wants to play these decks. So for the diversity of the format, they should just go.
Very true.
That's how it should be.
Yeah. So they definitely dropped the ball with Pioneer as far as that's concerned. What would be next on the list?
Well, next we would move into Modern, which I think is probably our bulk of what we can talk about today. And unfortunately, in my opinion, they didn't ban as much as I'd wanted to, but at least they did get the card, which was probably the one they needed to put the axe on, which is Arcum's Astrolabe being banned.
Right. Yeah. Obviously, there's a lot of cards in Modern that I would have liked to see go, like Urza, maybe Euro.
Yeah, I'm a little sad not seeing Teferi go.
Teferi, yeah, that's another one. Just cards that are just annoying to play against that you see in so many decks. But at the end of the day, at the very least, they got rid of the card that they needed to get rid of, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
You look at a lot of these decks, I mean, you're going to see Sultai Control taking a big hit, Bant Snow's taking a big hit, Euroza's taking a big hit, just Urza in general is taking a big hit.
Absolutely.
So it'll be interesting to see where the meta goes, what kind of other decks show up in place of those decks with Astrolabe being taken out of the format. So it is exciting to, at least within Modern, be able to possibly come back with some other decks that, previously weren't that competitive. But if you maybe add some other cards to it or, tried some different strategies now that these top decks are weakened, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. I think that, it's an unfortunate, as I said, Teferi wasn't banned, but with Astrolabe out, I think that just the mana fixing is going to be a lot harder to do. The fact that a card like Astrolabe with the ability to just play whatever mana you want, and the fact that I don't know why when they printed it needed to cantrip and just replace itself. It's just like, hey, here's your 7-card hand. It's like, not only are you going to play this card and you're going to be able to play whatever you want as far as color-wise in a 4-color deck from now on, but now it's like, oh, well, it just replaces itself. So you have no punishment to playing this card in your deck at all. In blue, if you play a Serum Visions, it replaces itself, but you don't get anything else out of it besides the cantrip and maybe a little bit of scrying. It's just like, why they needed to do that on this card, I have no idea at all. It made no sense to me.
Yeah, it seems like they have a trend a little bit of printing cards that would be fine as they are, but then they tack on things like card draw or life gain to it, and it just blows it out of proportion.
But white can't get card draw, though. We'll put it on this common snow artifact that cantrips, but not white, though. Guys, come on. We need to keep it limited. We give it to the colorless mana, not to the color pie. Come on.
White gets a +1/+1 counter for 7
Basri
mana.
Ket. 1/1 counters and life gain. What don't you understand, guys?
That's all white gets.
That's all it gets. big creatures. Oh wait, green is the biggest creature in all of Modern with Tarmogoyf on turn 2. Oh, whatever. Shut up.
So what are some decks or cards or something that you would think are gonna maybe shoot up in the meta a bit here?
I think that definitely a new control style deck has a chance to pop up in the meta here somehow. I think that although Teferi is going to be in there no matter what, unfortunately, it's not going to be a Grixis control deck, which I would like to see. But, I think maybe an Esper control deck maybe pops up of some kind, something of that fashion. Maybe just standard blue control comes back in the meta, which is fine. Controls are going to be up there in some fashion no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it might be a little bit more interesting, a little bit more fair now because it's like, well, I have to play these colors and actually play, some land base that will reflect the cards that I'm playing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I agree.
I think that has a chance. And obviously, the one big card that I'm really happy comes back in the meta maybe is a little bit of Blood Moon.
Blood Moon, yep. Yeah, without the mana fixing, it's going to be much more difficult for these decks to play without their non-basic lands, which means Blood Moon all of a sudden is much better.
Yeah.
Because previously it's like, oh, well, they're playing with a bunch of basic snow lands, so Blood Moon doesn't do anything at all. So it became a very dead card in the format for sure. Yeah, with Astrolabe going, not much point in running the snow cards, which means they're probably going to run a lot less of their basic lands.
Yeah, I think that a deck might come around and still try to play their Ice Vein Quaddles and whatnot. Then it might do well, it might not. It certainly won't be as good, and it'll be a lot harder to play with. But I think that this changes. Obviously, I think the control decks just kind of go away a little bit.
Yeah.
I think Urza stays. However, I think that Urza becomes more of a Simic deck again. I think that's how it's going to go, and maybe it just transitions to Sultai if they need to play the Thopter combination. I think is the way they're going to have to do it from now on. They can't play 4-color anymore.
Yeah.
And it's going to be harder to cast a little bit of Uro now with that mana restriction cost.
Yeah, I mean, now that they lost Mox Opal, now they're losing Astrolabe, which Astrolabe was essentially their replacement Mox Opal. It's going to be a lot more difficult for Urza to play in general, but definitely even the 5-color, 4-color versions that have been running around aren't really going to be that viable to play anymore.
True. And I at least I will say I'm happy about Astrolabe being going now because I think that as aggravating as the Uro and Urza can be able to play against, I think that they can be answered. I've played in modern, tournaments where if you play cards like Hercule's Recall, you can hurt Urza a lot. You play Blood Moon now and they're trying to play the Sultai combo with Thopter Foundry. It can hurt them a lot now, I think, if you play that. Teferi, I think, is a bit of a different thing because, they don't need much to do him. But, I think that there are answers. And I guess if the meta needs to just swap a lot to just playing a lot of exiling for Uros and a lot of artifact hate, so be it. I think that there is the argument to say, well, maybe let's not ban cards as much. Let's try to fight them more.
Well, that's always what I like to say when it comes to going on a witch hunt to try to get different cards banned. I think that you need to take a few months maybe to let the meta adjust and try to find cards that can combat them and just try to put them in their place. With all the cards that we have access to, especially when considering Modern has such a vast card pool.
Yeah,
you're almost always going to be able to find a card that answers something. It's going to be very rare, to have a card come out that's just absolutely unanswerable. But also after a certain point of time, obviously Modern Horizons came out over a year ago. Astrolabe has been a bit of a problem kind of ever since. So
yeah,
it's good to see it go.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, again, as you said, there are so many cards to answer. And when it comes to Uro, I can think automatically if you start playing Blue-White Control, you got your Mystical Disputes and Path to Exiles. Those can hit him pretty hard, Oh
yeah, definitely.
And if that takes over, maybe if Control takes over, then you'll have these aggro decks to fight it. Burn, play against that, or maybe Dredge. It's like how is Blue-White Control gonna answer it besides Rest in Peace? It might be difficult. So
right.
The only thing about Uro is the fact that it has so much redeemable qualities. It's not even the fact that it's, recursive. It's not the fact that it gains you life or ramps you and also draws you a card. It's a 6/6. It's got so much going for it.
Right.
So we'll see if we can fight that card when it comes to it now. We'll see what happens.
All right. So what's next?
The last format we got here is Pauper, and the 2 cards that were banned were Expedition Map and Mystic Sanctuary.
Right. So as we mentioned in our last episode, neither of us play Pauper.
No.
But we could tell from the community and some of the different things that we saw that Mystic Sanctuary was definitely one of the cards that needed to go. And from what I've gathered, Tron definitely needed a bit of a nerf in the format.
Mm-hmm.
So Pauper fans rejoice.
Yeah, I know. We took a look at some of the decks in the meta recently to try to brush up on what's happening. And, when you look at that, Tron has always been a staple, and maybe with Expedition Map and all these other cards, maybe it took a little bit of a hit, which makes sense. And then Mystic Sanctuary with all the really good blue cantrips and everything else. And I know that goes into Pauper because that's where you can still play cards like Preordain and Ponder.
Right.
I can see why a card like Mystic Sanctuary does, put problems out there. They have a lot of also really good low CMC creatures, your Fairy Seers and your Delver. I know there's that one other fairy that comes in at instant speed and counters equal number of fairies you control.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a lot of just good low to the body creatures they can play. So it makes sense.
Yeah, and when you look at cards like Deprive,
yeah,
I mean Mystic Sanctuary is basically an infinite loop almost with that.
Do they have days also in Pauper? Am I correct about that? I don't think they do. They may or may not.
I'm not sure.
Either way, if they do, really good. But otherwise, they still have a really good card pool.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, those make sense. For Pauper players, good for you. That's all I can say.
All right. So, that is the BNR list. We definitely think it's a little bit underwhelming overall. I think they could have done more, especially in Pioneer. I think they kind of failed when it comes to the Pioneer format today. But with Modern and Historic and Pauper, I think things are looking pretty good. Obviously, Modern could have definitely used a little bit more, taken away. And I know a lot of people are a little disappointed that a certain Splinter Twin wasn't unbanned.
Yeah, I don't know why that card is banned, but it is what it is, I guess.
It is what it is. So, so this is just a shorter episode that we wanted to record on the day of the BNR while our thoughts are kind of fresh. We'll probably touch upon it in the podcast for next, weekend.
Yeah, we'll see what the meta's looking like after this a little bit. So,
but yeah, so I just want to thank you guys for watching and
make sure to pay your parking and have a nice night.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like. It helps us out a ton. And if you enjoy our content, please consider subscribing. Make sure you follow us on all our social media @Coast Lizards, and have a fantastic day.